समझ नहीं आ रहा अपने सैलरी इंक्रीमेंट का क्या करूं।
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है? अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स के एसआईपी का टॉप अप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
क्या? समझ में नहीं आया।
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है? अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स का एसआईपी टॉपअप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
अब समझा।
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme related documents carefully.
The war in the Middle East has entered its second week now. In his first video address, Donald Trump spoke openly about regime change in Iran. Yet, by the time the second official communication arrived from the US Central Command, or the CENTCOM, that objective was dropped. Even then, the absence of explicit mention does not seem to mean the objective has completely vanished. Increasingly, evidence suggests that Washington may be wargaming a parallel path to destabilizing the Iranian regime, one from within. Now, this approach seems to be designed to operate alongside the ongoing US-Israeli strikes to degrade Iran's conventional military capabilities, particularly its ballistic missiles, drone networks, and naval assets. Despite limitations, particularly in magazine depth and interceptor stocks, both the Americans and Israelis have achieved full air superiority in Iranian skies and severely degraded its military capabilities. Meanwhile, Iran, pushed to the corner, has sought to widen the war. Its strategy has predictably been aimed at threatening the energy infrastructure of the Gulf and even the desalination plants now. Now, in its own way, this is a calculated and effective move. The wealthy Gulf monarchies rest on a delicate political contract: stability and prosperity in exchange for political acquiescence. Any sustained threat to their economic lifelines, be it the oil terminals or shipping lanes or refining capacity, and even the water that their populations drink, could shake the order-seeking business models of these states and provoke mass public anxiety within. The strategy, however, also carries certain risks for Tehran. Rogue attacks could convince Gulf states that stopping midway would be more dangerous. Reportedly, some Gulf governments are urging Trump to continue degrading Iranian military capabilities and push the war towards a decisive culmination. And in this context, revisiting the discussion on internal destabilization in Iran becomes relevant. So far, there have been no major defections within the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, or the IRGC, or the regular military, the Artesh. Yet, the fog of war shields accurate information from the region, and many developments discussed today will require clearer corroboration in the weeks ahead. So, first of all, let's understand, how has Iran, the state, evolved? To understand whether Iran can be destabilized internally, one must first understand the historical and ethnic experience of the Iranian state. Iran is a civilizational crossroads where diverse people, languages, identities intersect. Any attempt to weaponize these differences must be assessed through an analytical framework that considers historical experience, ethnic diversity, and the transnational nature of minority communities. Not all minorities can be mobilized in the same way because their relationship with the Iranian state varies widely. And if you think deeply, this pretty much applies to most minorities and with respect to their relationship with their state all over the world. Now, coming back, before I turn to the ethnic groups and their varying hostilities towards the Iranian regime, the state society dynamic of Iran merits some bit of attention. Before the Islamic Revolution of 1979, Iran was far less opaque than it is today. For centuries, it had been a society where local leaders, tribal authorities, and clerical figures wielded significant influence. Foreign powers, particularly Britain and Russia, exploited this decentralized political landscape during the late imperial period and into the early 20th century. As historian Mehran Kamrava has long argued, Iran's political evolution can be understood through the shifting balance between state power and societal power. Historically, Iran resembled a strong society with a weak state, creating an imbalance manipulated by foreign actors leading to internal fragmentation. It was precisely this vacuum that enabled Reza Shah Pahlavi to seize power in 1925 and begin consolidating the Iranian state. His rule marked the first serious attempt in modern times to build a centralized national authority capable of resisting foreign interference. His son and successor, Mohammad Reza Shah, continued that project after 1941, though his methods were deeply controversial. The second Shah's regime, backed by the West and enforced through an extensive secret police trained with British and CIA assistance, cracked down on democratic activists and religious leaders alike. Instead of strengthening legitimacy, repression deepened popular resentment. Ironically, these decades of centralization weakened local power structures and prepared the ground for an even stronger state. When the Shah was overthrown in 1979 and Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini returned from exile in Paris on 1st of February, Iran entered a new phase, the emergence of a highly centralized Islamic theocracy. And that brings us to the rise of Iran, the security state. The Islamic Republic rapidly constructed one of the most sophisticated security systems in the region. At its core perched the IRGC, tasked not only with defending the state, but also the ideological legacy of the revolution. The IRGC took shape during the 8-year Iran-Iraq war when Saddam Hussein's invasion threatened the survival of the revolutionary regime. By the time Ayatollah Ali Khamenei succeeded Khomeini in 1989, the IRGC gained the central position of the regime's watchdog. And over the decades that followed, IRGC developed a network of regional proxies to extend the regime's influence and build strategic depth. These included Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Houthis in Yemen, Hamas in Gaza, and several Shia militias across Iraq and Syria. A 2019 mapping project by the Washington Institute identified more than 100 Shia groups and subgroups across the Middle East connected directly or indirectly to Iran and basically to IRGC. Domestically, the IRGC's power expanded beyond the military sphere. It gained vast economic influence, controlling major sectors of infrastructure, energy, and construction. Yet, even this formidable apparatus could not fully resolve one persistent issue. It could only suppress, not resolve, the question of Iran's ethnic tensions. So, what exactly is Iran's ethnic conundrum? Iran shares land borders with 7 countries. Look at the map: Iraq, Turkmenistan, Afghanistan, Pakistan, Azerbaijan, Turkey, and Armenia. This geography alone hints at the ethnic complexity within its borders. Ethnic Persians make up roughly 60% of Iran's 90 to 92 million population, concentrated in the western and central regions, while the remaining 40% comprises of various minorities. Azeris, 16%, live mainly along the Azerbaijan border and relatively are quite integrated into the system. Indeed, the slain Ali Khamenei was of Azeri descent. Then come the Kurds that are 10% and Lurs that are 6%, while Baloch, Arabs, and Turkic groups each constitute about 2%. Now, among these, the Sunni Kurds and Baloch have historically harbored the deepest grievances against the Shia IRGC. Azeris, while more integrated, present a more complex case due to Israel's energy and military ties with Azerbaijan. Despite such fault lines, the IRGC's security apparatus has largely suppressed separatism, even as millions of these minorities have fled over the decades. Therefore, let's start with the Kurdish factor. Now, if Washington and Tel Aviv are indeed weighing internal destabilization, the Kurds appear the most plausible vector, but this plan would have significant challenges. Recent reports suggest that the CIA may be coordinating with Kurdish groups to move armed fighters into Iran. Now, Kurdish organizations already maintain thousands of combatants along the Iraq-Iran border, mainly in Iraq's Kurdistan region. Since 28th of February, several Kurdish groups have issued statements hinting at imminent action and urging Iranian military personnel to defect. Representatives of the Kurdish regional government have indicated that US support for these networks may have begun months before Operation Epic Fury was launched formally. Now, beyond Iraqi Kurdistan, Washington can also draw on long standing ties with Syrian Kurdish forces, many of whom are US trained during the fight against ISIS and are battle hardened in irregular warfare. But even if Kurdish mobilization occurs, success is far from certain. Externally, Turkey would have a major problem with the United Kurd Front that could well begin destabilizing Turkey itself. And secondly, even if some of the Kurdish groups did weaponize against the Iranian regime, timing, coordination, and alignment with other minority groups would be critical. And remember that not all minorities share the same interest or the same grievances against the regime. So now let's understand the other minority group, the Baloch, and that will highlight another category of limits on what is this insurgency plan. Any discussion on Iranian internal instability must also consider the Baloch in southeastern Iran. Their territory borders Pakistan's Balochistan province along a porous frontier stretching nearly 900 kilometers. Like the Kurds, the Baloch too are a transnational people, but their political dynamics differ significantly. Now, for instance, in Pakistan, Baloch insurgents are largely separatist, but in Iran, they are a radical Sunni organization. The region has also evolved into a hub of shadow economies, and smuggling Iranian and Russian crude oil, Russian weapons, and narcotics, etc., is very common. These networks exist in complex relationship alternating between co-optation and conflict with the IRGC itself. This complexity at times gets overlooked in policy debates wherein calls for supporting Baloch insurgencies in Pakistan rarely consider the broader implications. A greater Balochistan would destabilize not only Pakistan but also Iran and Afghanistan, potentially triggering a far wider regional instability. Now, for Washington and Israel, then, the option of destabilizing Iran internally carries profound risks. Arming Kurdish groups would unsettle Turkey and Syria, both of which view Kurds as a major security threat. Encouraging Azeri hostility could destabilize the Caucasus region. Supporting Baloch insurgents would further inflame the already volatile Afghanistan-Pakistan region or the Afpak region. Remember, there is a war going on there as well. In other words, destabilizing Iran through ethnic fault lines may solve one problem, which is regime change, but only to create several others that would still be against US interests. Now, does that ring a bell? The unfolding situation evokes uncomfortable historical memories of Yugoslavia's bloody disintegration in the 90s. This ethnically diverse state, held together for 37 years by a powerful leader, unraveled after his death in wars that scarred Europe for more than a decade. Yugoslavia's president, Joseph Broz Tito, was not from the dominant Serb ethnicity, like the slain Ayatollah wasn't from the dominant Persian ethnicity in Iran. Tito was of Slovenian Croat descent, and his passing triggered a cascade of conflicts along religious and ethnic lines with a spiral of violence among dominant majority of Serbs and other minorities. Of course, Iran's context and historical experiences are vastly different. However, it is not difficult to imagine the specter of prolonged fragmentation, human tragedy, and geopolitical mess if attempts at internal destabilization go awry. To turn Iran into another Syria is in no one's interest in the region. But regime change, if at all still the objective of the US-Israeli offensive, cannot be achieved without significant internal destabilization. It is a highly complex situation with several worst-case scenarios already playing out, and I'll be back to discuss more on this, so you stay tuned.